Okay, so our first topic we want to talk about, big deal because it's a huge headline.
Huge.
U.S. debt gets downgraded by Fitch, which I'm not familiar with them, but I'm assuming they're a firm that
Yep.
grades people, obviously.
Fitch, Moody's, S&P. Yep, all the same thing.
So tell us about what happened, why it's significant, and how it could potentially, hit real estate or influence what's going on in the market.
Absolutely. So with Fitch coming in and essentially downgrading the U.S. debt, what it's saying is they're saying, hey, your bonds, and that's what we survive on, government bonds is the U.S. debt. So, when we need money, we print money by issuing bonds and creating debt. Them downgrading it is saying that it's no longer a triple A investment, it's a double A plus. Now that's not that significant, but the last time this happened, the stock market dropped a bunch. It caused a whole bunch of ruckus, and the last time was in 2011. This time, of course, the stock market did drop a little bit, but we doesn't seem to be having the same reaction. But there's an underlying theme here that we as investors, as buyers, as real estate people really need to be paying attention to. And Fitch, what they did was they cited a steady deterioration in the standards of governance. Here's what they mean. They didn't like how politics fought till the last second over the debt ceiling. They don't like this political grandstanding. They don't like our debt growing and growing and growing and just getting bigger and bigger. What it means, though, and what we have to be considering is if the U.S. credit rating falls further, that kills our economy. We go into a strong recession. That's a problem. Now, I don't think this is going to happen, but you need to be aware of the long-term consequences of downgrades like this. They also said that there's nothing being done to rein in the debt, to act in a more professional manner in the government, and they don't believe there's going to be any changes in the presidential race in 2024. Honestly, that makes me a little bit sad because we're like a bunch of drunken sailors out there using our credit cards, just, the frat boys out just blowing money like crazy. The U.S. has to rein this in, otherwise our economy is going to run into a major problem. Also, when they downgrade us, this makes it harder for the U.S. to maneuver, okay? We're the global reserve currency. Everyone buys our debt. But as our debt gets downgraded, if it's not as easy for us to maneuver, it's not as easy for us to deal with this inflation problem. If this gets worse, inflation can go out of control, and all of a sudden we're in a hyperinflation environment. Yes, that is a possibility. I don't think we're going there, but you have to be aware of the possible consequences of this. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. This is another thing that's going to cause higher rates for longer. The reason for that is with that slight credit downgrade, now this is just one of the major agencies, that doesn't help us fight inflation, okay? That makes our debt weaker, okay? That makes the dollar weaker. We need a strong dollar. We need the ability to borrow so we can fight inflation. We have the ability to maneuver. Here's another thing that people are not considering, though. What does this mean for the everyday person? The everyday person, because of this one simple move, means their credit cards just got more expensive. Their home equity lines of credit just got more expensive. Car payments got more expensive. So this did actually cause consumer debt to maybe increase 25 to 50 basis points, which is 0.25 to 0.5%. Now that doesn't sound like much, but what if you're a consumer with $30,000 worth of credit card debt? 0.5 point starts to be a lot of money. And this could be the difference between a consumer buying a car. So what's interesting is this is also helping the Fed in their tightening cycle. The last time that this happened, I didn't know this, so I had to go do a little research, my man. And you said right before when we started this that you actually already knew about this, so you were so far ahead of me. So the last time the U.S. debt was downgraded was in 2011.
After the last financial crisis.
It was towards the latter part
latter part
of the last financial crisis.
Sounds like something we're going through right now.
History repeats, it rhymes. This is the same thing happening over again. In both cases, the debt limit was raised after negotiations happened, okay? But these negotiations were causing, the general public didn't like it, the stock market didn't like it, it was political grandstanding. It led to stock market declines. So S&P, they downgraded us in 2011 also to the AA plus from their AAA rating. What then happened is that The CEO at the time, his name was Devin Sharma. He was ruthlessly attacked by politicians, and the U.S. Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner at that time said he showed a stunning lack of knowledge based on U.S. fiscal budget math, and he reached an absolute wrong conclusion. So the Treasury Secretary comes out and just starts attacking this person. All these politicians start attacking this person. What happened to that CEO?
Got fired.
That CEO got fired and magically stepped down. Okay, now let's bring it back to 2023. So in 2023, Janet Yellen steps out, starts criticizing. It's the same playbook. Politicians are fighting. Janet Yellen says, Fitch's decision does not change what Americans, investors, and people around the world already know, that U.S. Treasuries remain the world's preeminent safe and liquid asset, and that the American economy is fundamentally strong. What's going to happen to the CEO of Fitch?
He's going to have a conversation with somebody.
Somebody's going to have a conversation with him.
Someone might show up at his front door.
I think we need this type of journalism. That's what creates a strong democracy. We have to disagree with the government. They need to be able to pull punches. So I'm not making light of that in any way, and I actually genuinely enjoy it. And I want our politicians to take two things really seriously. I want political change. The debt ceiling, I think, is not something we should monkey with and work for political gain. And two, this constant grandstanding that we have in politics over issues is getting ridiculous. Let's focus on an awesome country. Let's focus on controlling the debt and just getting our house cleaned up, dealing with inflation. Matter of fact, I wish we were out of most foreign things right now. Just come home. Deal with inflation. Then we can go save the world. But let's deal with home first.
Yeah, a couple things that come to mind. The Fitch report is just calling out bad behavior, horrible habits. The government's acting like that's not the truth. Just because they're the biggest economy and are the reserve currency, it doesn't mean you can't make, decisions that are negative, right?
Yep.
That aren't smart, and that's what they're doing, just like S&P did. And what's sad is just because you say it was a wrong observation, or you're smart, or you know what you're doing, doesn't mean that that's the truth, right? Both Yellen and that past Treasury person. And then unfortunately, like you said, it affects the average person. All these people, right? Even the Fitch and S&P people that called them out, and then Treasury Secretary, Congress people, government people, they're so well off that inflation's just not hitting them.
Yes.
Like the conversation is always on what does the government do? What's these credit rating agencies saying? What about the person that's just trying to buy their first house? And what's nuts is, let's just take it back to the Northwest. I think a lot of markets are in this position. We even thought there was going to be a bigger correction, but because of lack of inventory, partly because of the pandemic and everything we're going through and high interest rates, it's not coming down.
Yep.
So it's not giving those people that kind of needed a little bit of a breather, like, hey, throw me a bone. They're not getting that opportunity. And interest rates are higher. And this is only maybe not going to raise it dramatically, but it's definitely not going to lower it.
No, it's a little extra icing on top of the cake, and it's hurting, the people who have less money in the middle class. Inflation is destroying them, and this just makes that matter worse. And it's sad that politicians are so bent on their agenda and political gain, because like you said, they've got theirs, and so they're hurting the little people during this process.
I think this is exposing something even bigger, though.
Tell me more.
What is Janet Yellen's job ultimately when it comes to what she says?
Oh, keep the U.S. economy humming.
At least thinking that it's humming. You
Bingo.
get what I'm saying? So even if there's cracks in the foundation and there's an emergency going on,
yes,
they can't say, oh, you know what? They're actually right. We're not running this ship the right way, because lack of confidence will lead to a guaranteed recession. Everybody pulls their money back. They're not investing in things. Let's take it to real estate. Are builders more likely to get loans and build if things in the economy aren't going well? Or are they more likely to maybe take a break?
So builders, there's like two sides to the question that you just asked. Are builders, what happens as the economy changes?
Yeah.
It depends on inventory, and also it depends on credit. So a really, really big builder, the Nationals, the LGIs, the Pulte's, things like that, their money is Wall Street money and their own money. They're not affected. They can keep moving, keep going. It's the medium, the small builders, the local builders who, as credit tightens, what happens is your local community bank over here, they tighten up because of the economy, and that affects the little guy again. It's not the big nationals, it's your little local builders that get affected.
Which is not good for the greater economy.
Which is not good for the greater economy and not good for your local economy. Because one thing that, national builders, they're publicly traded companies, but those publicly traded companies are owned by the whole world. So the money doesn't even necessarily stay here. You got a local builder who builds in the Seattle metro, the most of the money is going to stay here. So you can really help on that local level. Now, as the economy starts to get really bad, everyone just pulls back out of fear. So there becomes a tipping point there where it doesn't matter about the liquidity. If it gets too bad, they pull back out of fear. Right now in the Seattle metro, what we're actually seeing is the opposite, just the super low inventory. So builders are going in harder. And like we recommended to our people before, I recommend you go in right now too, because your time horizons by the time you get the product out of the ground is going to be next spring, next fall, something like that. It's looking really good right now. Snohomish County, and I don't have the numbers specifically for King, but Snohomish County appreciated 9.2% since February. So when you look at July versus July, it was only down 0.5% versus last July. That means in August, the numbers, once again, I know Snohomish County really tight. Snohomish County's numbers will show year-over-year appreciation, even regardless of what happened in 2022. We're back. It's game on. Now, is everyone fearful? Yep. But you shouldn't be, because the numbers are telling you go. That's the thing. Ignore the media. The numbers say go.
Which actually is a great segue to the next topic about foreign money, right? Foreign buyers. We're talking about, how certain, like businesses, contractors will be affected less or more, partly because of foreign investments. Foreign buyers are bailing on the U.S. housing market.
The two simple reasons: rates are higher and a strong dollar. So as the Federal Reserve raised interest rates at the fastest in history, the dollar became stronger. So if you're in another country and you go to trade the currency, it literally now costs you more to buy it. Okay. Now, not all of them are cash. Some of them are financing too. So as the cost of financing in the U.S. goes up, less foreign investment. So international buyers, they purchased 14% fewer homes in the U.S. in the past year, which is the least, according to the National Association of Realtors, since 2009. So that's since like the heart of the recession. So this is a number to know and pay attention to. So the person that says, oh, I'm being beat out by the foreign buyer, statistically, that's untrue today. The median price that they're purchasing here in the U.S. is $396,400. What do you think the top 5 countries are that are purchasing from outside the United States? And don't look down at the paper in front of you.
I'm not going to. So I'm just going to guess, okay?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I'm not going to cheat.
Yeah.
China, Japan, London, Saudi Arabia, and I want to say, what's another Asian country? South Korea.
Perfect. Top 5 countries in order: China, Mexico, Canada, India, Colombia.
So Mexico. Well, that's something we should dig up a little bit. Yeah.
Yes, we should totally. I think we could do a whole other thing digging into these stats.
Yeah.
Mexico and Canada kind of makes sense. We're sandwiched between them. China makes sense also. I actually didn't. India and Colombia were not on my list. So out of those 5 countries, which ones were purchasing the most expensive homes and in what state?
Well, I want to just say China as a default.
Yeah, you're 100% right. China.
And which state are they buying in?
Yep.
Just one?
Just one.
California?
Yep. So Chinese buyers had the highest average price of $1.23 million in California. And they bought a third of them in California. So if you looked at just the Chinese buyers, a third of what they bought was just in California. Foreign home buyers bought in these states: Florida first, California second, Texas third, North Carolina fourth, Arizona fifth, Illinois sixth. Out of them, what percentage used cash?
Almost all of them?
42% used cash.
I thought it would have been higher.
I actually thought it would have been higher too. And it also means that they believe in our economy. They believe in our area, and they want to park dollars over here.
They don't want to buy over there?
Part of it is true. What are they buying, or the reasons they were buying was vacation homes, rental properties is what they said. Now, also, I just from other research, other articles, I believe part of those Chinese buyers, especially in California, is for California having awesome schools and universities for their kids to go to school there. That makes total sense.
I have a statement based off of these observations that I think will help people understand why we're in such a screwed up situation. I would not have thought Mexico. Okay. One reason Mexico is on here, people that aren't aware, we're having an issue at the border.
Yep.
And immigration has slowed down. Whatever reason, good or bad, it's slowed down. I know people that have told me like, it's harder to just get a visa to come into the United States, Mexicans specifically, and then forget about it if you want to become a citizen. So what's happening is we used to have a lot of workers that would go over the border, work, like either whether a day worker or just work in a season, go back home to their families and live their life in Mexico. Because of the border challenges as well as immigration, people are deciding, I'm just going to stay in America. I'm going to bring the family over here. This is specifically related to the issues we're having. Has nothing to do with the Fed, has nothing to do with rates. And so the reason I bring this up is this is one of probably 10 plus variables that's affecting the U.S. housing market.
Yes.
That's making it hard. You know, one of the things I say about why real estate moves slow is because there's too many variables to just like pinpoint it to one. So as the investors, this is why this show is so dynamic if you think about it, because we're talking mostly about Snohomish County, Seattle, greater area, but obviously we can be affected by a migration from, you know, the Midwest to the Northwest, right? We can be affected by higher interest rates.
Lack of labor,
which I mean goes back to even something like this. This is such a massive influx, right? When you would think there'd be less buyers because of higher interest rates. Yep. And even this was saying there's fewer international investors. This is kind of like a curveball. It's unpredictable. And this is why in the economy in general, at the government level, like Janet Yellen Treasury, as well as even in real estate, you need predictability, not volatility.
Yes.
And volatility let's just talk about agents, right? Real estate agents. When there isn't like a clear path to how your business is going to make money the next 6, 18 months, 2 to 3 years, you have to kind of pull back. You might not hire as many people. Yep. You might not invest in the same things. Now, you and I both know is like right now is the time to work harder, right? Yep. Build smarter, not necessarily bigger. But you see what I'm saying about this is just one variable that wasn't even part of this article that's affecting some of these data points. And it gets crazy. This is why 2020 to 2022, the pandemic, the lockdowns, the supply chain, international relationships, global supply. Yep. I mean, we can literally just talk about copper piping, right? And the issues we're having at the plumbing level. You see all those, including this one thing, is going to make it so that even with this show where we look at all these data points, where we look at the actual numbers in the market, even the smartest people cannot predict what's going to happen in a year from now. And that's why ultimately it comes back down to principles, comes down to long-term thinking. Yep. And this is one of the reasons why real estate is so powerful, because at the end of the day, people need a place to live in. Rentals will always be in demand. Yep. And appreciation over a long period of time will make you a winner more than anything else, on top of cash flow happening because you have an asset that's highly desired.
Let's dig into the meat and potatoes of this for just a couple seconds. The immigration problem here in the United States is massively inflationary, and it's massively hurting affordability in housing. Here's why. And people they try to break this down to one issue, but it's bigger. If you have a bunch of talent, and so I'm talking computer programmers, AI people, nuclear scientists that were sucking, the talent wars is really starting to happen. The new Cold War is the talent war, where all the major economies are hunting for talent. And we need to get our immigration policy focused on sucking hardcore talent into the US. Because if you bring in talent, and talent creates innovation, innovation is naturally anti-inflationary. It causes prices to go down. So immigration reform there. Immigration reform also on the skilled labor portion, or excuse me, just plain labor. Getting more labor into the U.S. drives the cost of housing down. What's happening is there's not enough skilled labor currently in construction, so we got to import it. Second thing we need to do, you know what? We should bring trades back in school. Show people how, you know what, being a plumber is an awesome job. Being an electrician is an awesome job. Go be a framer. We need to get people back into that. Right now, there's some crazy stats. For every 5 people that retire in the construction industry, like only 1 replaces them. Well, if people in the U.S. only one's going to be replaced, you got to recruit the other 4 from outside. And then last but not least, there's 2 more. Sorry. You should allow people with a certain amount of investment capital buy their way in because, of course, that buoys up the economy. And last but not least, there needs to be a heart component to this too, where we allow a certain amount of people in who just need to be in the United States. But it's a number that's set. It's a border that has a process. See, I'm not for the just everyone can run through, but if there was a process and a way to do it, I mean, we could win this immigration game. Go find all the talent, go find all the awesome labor, go find the money, and guess what? Hey, you really need to be here? Come on into. That wins over a long period of time because most major economies, due to our demographics, are going to start shrinking on a population basis. So we have to start doing something today. And the left, the right, the middle in politics have really got to get this figured out.
The last thing I'll say on this note is it's surprising though, America's still probably, I'm guessing here, number 1 country that people want to get into, even with all of our problems.
Yep.
And might be partly because of the currency being ours. We have the printer, so we're closest to the money. So we're the ones that get to do everything first. You know, I do kind of disagree with some of the habits like that the Fitch is pointing out, but it's also making it so that if anything happens, it starts here.
Yeah.
You know, and so whether good or bad, I mean, this could go into a deep rabbit hole. Point is the volatility of all of this, and this is why locking down an economy, this is why stopping immigration and changing things up so quickly can have long-term consequences, and we're facing it right now. Things that were decided upon in 2020, whether it was because of safety or fear or whatever, we're paying the price right now.
100%.
And we're going to pay higher prices because the Fed just raised rates. So let's talk about that.
Okay, so Fed raised rates again. Now what? So first off, I was wrong. I didn't think they were going to do it this time. I was wrong. I admit it. Great. Cool. Now, are they going to do it again in September? They keep telling us they are. I don't think they need to, but they still may do it. Let me explain. CPI numbers are reflecting good. The Fed's favorite metric, the CPE, looking good. However, understand now that with Fitch, with this last raise, the average home buyer's mortgage is slightly over 7 right now. That's really high relative to the last few years. That is going to cause the economy and real estate to slow down a little more. Plus, and we just talked about these stats, but we're heading into the 3rd and 4th quarter. What happens to real estate in the 3rd and 4th quarter of the year?
Slows down.
It naturally slows down. So wait a second. More expensive debt. The Fed's saying, I'm going to raise again, and you're going into a naturally slower season. You will see some declines throughout the U.S. You're going to see some declines in commercial, especially things that are cap rate sensitive. There are markets, though, where you are going to see 0 declines in price appreciation. I know people don't want to hear that. My market, the Seattle Metro, is one of them. Doesn't mean you're going to get a bunch of appreciation, but I don't expect a bunch of depreciation this fall. The Fed is very, very talking tough and walking us through it, but realize they have to. Inflation is the campfire. You sat around it. You burned it. It still has the embers there. So they have to continue to talk tough. They have to continue until they get their metrics. So CPE needs to come down a little bit more. And then also unemployment needs to go up. The unemployment numbers are not high enough for the Fed yet. What you are starting to see, though, is you're starting to see cracks in the foundation. You're starting to see people report earnings that they hit, but then they missed on revenue. What that means is they didn't get the total amount of sales that they wanted, but they got a little more profit out of somewhere else. That's not a sustainable long-term function. That could be them finding one little source of profit. It could also be creative accounting in order to boost profits one more time. You are also seeing bankruptcies rise. You are seeing liquidity crunches for small businesses and investors. So there is a lot of cracks. It's held together by Band-Aids and bubble gum right now. Is the Fed going to raise us? Okay, my heart and emotion says no. The facts say we'll probably get another raise in September. Most of this is already baked into your 30-year fixed debt. What I need people to hear, though, is this part. Rates are going to be higher for longer than you want them to be, and you must be prepared to weather the storm. Rates will come down, maybe mid to late 24, definitely by 25. So you as an investor need to be weathering the storm. You as a home buyer need to be weathering the storm. Everyone needs a little more cash right now. But if you have too much cash, you need to get that cash cycling because inflation is still hot. So it's eating your cash any way that you look at it. We need to really watch what the Fed is doing and pay attention, but don't be scared by the Fed because that's a tactic they're using to slow the economy down. Once again, I believe the opportunities have already started. Start grabbing them.
Are you seeing them? Are you getting phone calls or are you talking to people? And do you have examples of a deal that you saw that maybe was overlooked because people aren't looking?
There is a townhome lot for 4 townhomes. They are what's called fee simple, which means you can sell each one individually. This was not on the market, so this was just through the network. Good investors have always got a deal or two hiding in their back pocket. The seller said, I want $590,000 for it. And we said, $300. He said, eat shit. And that's a technical term in case you're wondering. And 60 days goes by. He goes, 525. And we said, 300. He said, Paxan, but I love you anyway. We're like, wait a second. It's changing. He comes back, 475, 300, maybe 325. Another 90 days goes by. So this started earlier this year. 3 weeks ago, 360, 150 grand down. We'll carry the rest. Sold. That's a good price. So right now, the negotiation game is about patience and about hunting for the right deal that matches your investment goals, your criteria, your buy box, and your long-term goals for you and your family, and being cautiously optimistic with prudent reserves. But there's tons of deals out there.
That's in an environment where we went up 9%, right? There's lack of inventory, yet this person, and I think this also exposes something else. I don't know this person. This is an anecdotal example, but the point is people are going to start needing to sell. They're going to get desperate and they're going to move things. And if you're not in position, I mean, this took 5 months, right?
Yep.
Then you don't want to be last in line. You want to be first in line, maybe prematurely lining up for these deals. And it goes back to what we were talking about a few weeks ago. Door knocking,
yes,
calling. There's a for sale by owner, by the way, down the street that you need to call. Okay. And like as an agent, as an investor, even as a buyer, right? Yeah. I would suggest calling these for sale by owners as a buyer, literally. So even if you've got an agent, whatever, I think that it's important for you to start understanding like, hey, where are the deals that I can have? Because I'll give you one example. Let's move on to the last point. Okay. Yeah. I have somebody that works for me and they're a firm that has services that I recruited them for. And they have somebody on their team that works. Anyways, I asked them to do something months and months ago. This is their business, so I shouldn't have to ask more than once, but it was like 3 times. We had 3 meetings, okay? Then come to find out, I call them today and say, hey, so what's going on with that thing I requested? Oh, that person quit. There's a new person. Okay, I was like, oh, okay, so what happened? Did the ball get dropped or whatever? It's like, oh, no, this person's responsible. Point I'm trying to make is, even when you hire people, this includes agents, you have to be your own squeaky wheel.
Yes.
And even with, if you're an investor, you've got to be the squeaky wheel for these potential for sale by owners or off-market properties. Yep. Being the squeaky wheel is so much more valuable than people realize until the squeaks get heard and then reveal opportunities for themselves.
Follow up.
That's it.
I want to give the listeners one more thing. This is like simple golden nugget. People think deals are always in relation to desperation. Deals have different levels of motivation. The one I spoke of, it's from another investor. He has money. He has properties. What he's doing is he's repositioning the capital for a better deal that he's already working on. So it made sense to get rid of that one. So don't confuse desperation. What we're actually just looking for is people who want to do deals, people who are fun, people who are motivated, but that motivation is not always desperation.
Sometimes just timing.
Sometimes it's just timing. And your job, like you just said, follow up, be the squeaky wheel, and be there when the motivation happens.
Last point, Business Insider says, there are way too many real estate agents. A glut of mediocre realtors is screwing over home buyers. Yeah, tell me about this. Because it sounds like 2008.
As a market changes, of course, people get upset as prices change. So that's what you have to, that's the underlying tone here. Second, this is a great headline. It was almost clickbaity, so I mean, it sucked me right in. This is one of those controversial topics. There's a lot of real estate brokers in the United States. Do we need as many? What level of education should they have? What level of professionalism should they have? And because we have so many, is that helping the consumer, hurting the consumer? I side with the article on this, and I want to make one thing really clear. I own brokerages. I recruit people to our teams and our brokerages. So I'm very much pro real estate, but I'm also pro increasing the standards. Because what the article pontificates on is if there's a bunch of real estate brokers and agents running around and they don't know what they're doing, they're helping a buyer or a seller with one of their largest purchases, they're hurting them. What it gets wrong is it says too many brokers doesn't drive down the commission. I was like, that's a supply and demand argument. You're thinking about it wrong. More supply, prices go down. Okay. However, the part about the professionalism, they nail. I mean, just nail it. I would love to see the professionalism in the real estate industry go up. I'd love to see a higher level of education. I'd love to see apprenticeships. You know, like you go become an electrician, you have to be an apprentice for a period in time. I would like to see the standards increase because that's how much I love this business. I want to protect people. I want to protect the consumer. I want to protect them from the bad agent. And so at the end of this, I have a list of questions, things that people could ask to help to protect themselves. But just to go through it real quick, a high number of agents does increase competition. I don't think we need as many as we have, though. And according to the National Association of Realtors, basically since like 2010, we've got probably, this is an Anton guess, 400,000 to 600,000 more than we actually need based on the available sides per agent. Cool, leave my industry or become more professional. 2, let's get the education standards increased. You could either make it cost more money, require a college education. 3, I love the idea of apprenticeships. Most brokerages, they bring people in, they educate them, but there's not enough time to hold that person's hand. So what if, you've been in the industry 20 years and I'm brand new and I come in, now have to work for you for 2 years before I can work on my own. Well, that just increased the standard. I love it. One thing this article also mentions, it's like, well, what if people just did for sale by owner and they just did it themselves? Unfortunately, what happens then in a real estate transaction and why real estate professionals are so helpful is they have what's called asymmetric information or knowledge. That means they have a ton of knowledge about one specific thing. In that case, now let's assume they both have good real estate people working for them. That's a good battle. That's good exchanging of information, good communication. It's equal. Now, if someone who doesn't have representation shows up to the hardcore investor and they own 30 properties, unfortunately, that buyer is going to get gutted in that situation without any protection. Also, a lot of the litigation happens in relation to off-market and private party transactions. Well, why is that? A big thing people discount with real estate professionals is they stand in the middle and they prevent people from saying and making promises to each other that then are not fulfilled or not documented in a contract.
Good example is just because you've watched UFC for 10 years doesn't mean, even though you know how they should have fought and they should have done this, that you could get in the ring with an actual UFC fighter
Yes.
and actually go toe to toe with them. I mean, you have to give real estate professionals, agents some credit, even ones that are just beginning, because like you said, just one source of information, the MLS, right? Multiple listing service. There's so much data there. And in a negotiation, whoever knows more will
Yes.
win that battle versus the person who's selling their own house. They might know what's going on in their street. They might have access to Redfin, but they're not breaking down that data the way the tools that these other platforms that agents have access to. So it's literally like a professional UFC fighter against the couch professional that has like a lifelong subscription to UFC night.
Yeah. These comments are not directed against new agents. Realize there are new agents who are phenomenal because they maybe understand business, or they come at it and they start attacking it like a business. They show up every day. They go to scripts. They get education. They get mentorship. They get coaching, or they're a part of a successful team, or they plug into their brokerage. So there are new people who do phenomenal jobs. Don't misinterpret it. But what people need to do, and so I'm going to give you just a quick list here, is you need to protect yourself. And here's how you can protect yourself. Go look at their reviews, but understand reviews can be game. Ask for referrals. Now understand, people refer people in real estate just because they like them. Liking them does not demonstrate their professionalism. I want you then to take their name, drop it into Google, and look for complaints against them, and then also look at social profiles. If you see them out drinking every night, that may not be the right person. If you see things that don't align with your core values, it may not be the right person. I want you to interview real estate brokers like you would a contractor, like you would a banker, like you would a doctor. And if you don't like what you're hearing or don't understand it, you would go get a second opinion. Simple questions. How long have you been in business? What is your area of expertise? Be very, very careful of this one. Not all agents understand all areas of real estate. This is a bad assumption consumers make. We do a lot of land. We do a lot of development projects. We do investment properties. So I'm the guy everyone calls and says, hey, what do you think about this piece of land? How do I do this? How do I solve this problem? What do we do with this investment? Most agents can't answer those questions. So there's areas of expertise: resale, new construction, condos, luxury homes, waterfront homes, farms and ranch, land development, real estate investing, multifamily, commercial, just to name a few. Okay, now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. How many transactions have you done this year? How many have you done in the lifetime of your career? Do you have an admin that helps you? Are there licensed team members that can help you? What happens if you're on an appointment or you can't get to me? How big is the brokerage you work for? How long have they been in business? Are there affiliated businesses with your business? A lot of these brokerages have other businesses tied to them that are right in there that can actually help you and sometimes get you discounted service or a higher level of professionalism. What is your success rate on contract to close? People don't know this. This is the average across the U.S. 30% of transactions die once they go under contract. Well, if someone else has a higher number than that, they're beating the average. What's your list to sales price ratio? List to sales price ratio is very simply thought of this. If the property was $100,000 and their list to sales price ratio was 98, if they were the listing agent, it means they sold it for $98,000. If they were the buyer's agent, it means it sold for $98,000. You can get the real estate agent's batting average. They can tell you on the buy side, on the sell side, we beat the market all the time and have numbers to prove it. How do you learn? What time do you take to learn? Do you have a coach? Do you practice? Have you ever been sued? Could I talk with a past buyer, a past seller? And last but not least, how could you best help and serve me? Any other questions that you thought of while I went through this?
I think that one question is, do you do this full time? I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but is this something you do as like a side gig? Because one thing you see during good markets, and you saw this in the last decade, you also saw it previous to 2008, people knew there was a lot of money to be made, so they get a license to do this on the side. Nothing wrong with this at all, right? We're a country full of entrepreneurs. But the difference between a side job opportunist and a full-time professional is massive, especially in a market like this. During good times, great. And if they become professionals in the process or work with a great team, awesome. But in a market like this, you need someone like an Anton who is in it 24/7, literally waking up and looking at stats. When things pop up, how many times have you did you see this, right? Like, you need those people that are obsessed about it, because that's the difference between making the right offer and making a horrible offer. Listing your house at the right price to accomplish your goals versus it being on the market for 6 months. So that is probably one of my number one questions. And that's one of the ways to expose somebody that's a wannabe. The only way around it, and this is a little tidbit for the part-time realtors, and you already said it. The only way to do this as a side thing is if you're partnered with an amazing team who makes it so that you, as a marketing arm for that business, can actively go get listings and new buyers, but the team is supporting you on the back end. That's the only way to do it if you're a part-timer. So you, as a person looking for an agent, there's nothing wrong with a part-time, but what you're looking for when they say is that, hey, I don't do this full-time, I have this other job, but I'm partnered with a firm or a agency, right, that literally this is what they do. They take care of all the transactions. They tell me all the data. And also kind of are being honest with you. I'm really trying to bring in business for the team to be able to do this, right? I still will communicate with you. By the way, I've got an assistant for when I'm not around. That's really important versus they'll just beat around the bush. Oh, well, actually, I work 2 jobs and it's easy, right? Oh, I have a family. I deal with them and, I don't sleep at all. Like, they'll actually, I remember people talking that way during the heydays, right? The 2006, 7, and 8. And then what happens? They're the ones that are working a different job when the recession came. They're the ones that actually will screw your deal, and you might not ever hear from them. So it's important. What you're talking about right now is so important for you looking for an agent, because if you don't have the right agent, it can kind of ruin your life short term.
You're looking for experience that has stood the test of time, been through market transitions, the good, the up, the down, the sideways, and people who have your back and they are working in their strengths and in their area of expertise. Just that simple. If that's in alignment, go, 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 go. If it's not, find someone who can support you in your goals and in your mission that you're trying to accomplish.
Boom. More next week.
More next week.
I think they're going to raise rates.
Oh, yeah.